Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello. I am excited for my conversation today with Rose Gaylor. She is the founder and owner of The Refill Exchange, a zero-waste grocery and retail store focused on reducing single-use plastics for food storage. She started Refill Exchange just this year. In fact, she's just launching as we speak after seeing the prolific consumption of single-use plastics during the height of the pandemic. And this is obviously not just something that's happening here in the US. I know I've had the opportunity to travel quite a bit, and many countries are dealing with this. She is utilizing her background in environmental science. She works to build sustainable solutions to combat climate change and prevent harmful, toxic waste from plastic use and manufacturing. Welcome to the show today, Rose.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we are going to get all into your business here. I promise. But okay, I always like to learn the backstory of folks. So I know you're from rural Iowa, initially a Midwest girl. Take us along your career path, talk about some of those early choices you made, and start us off with college.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Iowa. I went to University of Iowa for undergraduate, graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies. So I was always interested in the environment, knew I sort of wanted to go down that path. So I finished college. Actually, during college, I did a study abroad program to Kenya. So that was my first sort of eye-opening experience. Lived in Kenya for a semester, learned about, a different country, environmental issues there, wildlife management and ecology was the program. I knew at that point that was such a great positive experience that I knew after I graduated college, I wanted to join the Peace Corps. So once I was finished with college, I joined the Peace Corps and I served in Paraguay, South America. And I was an agroforestry volunteer. So more environmental work. I worked with small scale farmers. So I used techniques both in agriculture and forestry to help those small scale farmers improve their farming practices, improve their soil, and basically improve their crops and the production of their crops. So most of the farmers were subsistence farmers, so very small scale, producing food to feed their families. So we use those technical methods to improve soil quality, to prevent erosion, prevent water runoff, and help them overall improve their crop production in their farms. Wow. So it was a wonderful eye-opening experience as well.
I can imagine. Wow. And so I just want to pause there for a sec, Rose. I mean, you grew up in rural Iowa, that, you went to Kenya and then joined the Peace Corps. Any friends or family say like, what are you doing? You're so adventurous.
Yes, of course. I am the youngest of 5. And so I had siblings that had gone off and done a lot of different things on their own. They had traveled and they went to college. So I sort of had that exposure, growing up, watching what they did. I was from a small town. So anytime you sort of traveled outside of Iowa was a big deal. And we didn't grow up traveling. So leaving, during college and after college was a big deal. But it was exciting. And I knew that, there was a whole big world out there outside of Iowa. And so I was excited, really happy to have that opportunity to travel and learn about other countries and learn about other cultures.
That is awesome. Wonderful. Well, so you were in the Peace Corps for how long?
It's 2 years and 3 months. Okay. That was the service that I had. Yeah.
Got it. That's wonderful. Awesome. So you came back, and then what was next?
So I came back and worked. I actually worked in the US and then worked for Peace Corps. I went back down to Paraguay, was a technical trainer, trained the new Peace Corps volunteers. Then came back to the US and decided I worked for a little while and then finally decided to go back to graduate school. So I wanted to pursue more education. I went to Indiana University, and they have a school called the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, or SPIA. And again, I have the environmental background, was interested in staying in environmental science, but also wanted to study public administration or public policy. And so that's what SPIA did for me. It gave me that opportunity to actually go through their dual degree program. So I went to SPIA and graduated with 2 master's degrees, one in environmental science and one in public affairs or public administration.
Wow, that is amazing. So you have these what an incredible journey you've had. How old are you at this point, Rose?
At this point, I am 41. So,
okay, got it.
Into the decade of 40s.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. So you have these 2 amazing degrees, or double degrees there. Mm-hmm. What was next for you?
So after that, I guess the sort of natural next step was I wanted to, have a career in government, start a career in government. So after I finished grad school, I went to Washington, D.C., and I worked for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the federal EPA. I worked there in DC at the headquarters office. I worked in a water quality standards program, so focused on water quality, and stayed there for a few years. That was also, a different type of eye-opening experience to be working at the federal level, learning really how the federal government functions, understanding, the environmental laws surrounding water quality, the regulations, and how those are implemented and how they're enforced as well.
Wow. And how long in total were you at the EPA?
I was there at headquarters for about 3.5 years. So I was in Washington, D.C. And then after that is when I came out to California, when I came to Southern California.
Awesome. And what caused that shift?
That shift was actually for my husband's work. So he came out here and for UCSD, actually. So then I said, I'm on the East Coast for a little while. I like it out here, but, maybe I should just try the West Coast.
That's awesome. Wonderful. So when did you land in California?
So let's see. So we landed here, I guess it was in the beginning of 2012.
Okay.
Is that correct? Or beginning of 2013? Now the years are merging.
Okay.
But yeah, around that time frame, I think 2013.
Okay. So you've been here a little while. That's great.
Yeah.
And when you came to San Diego, did you continue in the same line of work?
I did, yes. So when I came out here, I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, so a different federal agency, but still focused on their environmental program. So water quality in their permitting program. And then after being there a couple of years, I actually switched back to the federal EPA. So I went back to the Environmental Protection Agency, but to a regional office. So there are regional offices out here in California. And so that was my most recent position, was working for EPA regional office here in California.
That's great. And I have to ask this question. I know you and Cindy Jalen have connected. Did you know Cindy prior to Hera Hub as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So I did know her from the San Diego office.
Okay.
When I first came out to California, I actually still worked for headquarters office in DC, but the nice folks in the San Diego office let me sit and basically take up some of their space. Okay. So that's how I first met Cindy, was that I actually sat in their office for a little while I was still working for headquarters.
That's great. Yeah. And for folks that are listening to this, I'm like, who's Cindy Jalen? She spent 20 years at the EPA, and yes. She's been on the podcast as well, and then left and sailed around the world with her family for a couple of years, which was awesome.
Right. Incredible.
Cool. I know. So that is great. Well, good. So when did you come up with the idea for Refill Exchange, or is it something that's been kind of looming in the back of your mind for a long time?
It's been looming for a few years. I think just, in the environmental space, the whole zero waste movement and just these processes of thinking through before you actually use something and waste it or throw it away. That's definitely been, having a moment, I would say, the last couple of years. People are more aware of it. There's more and more scientific research about what's happening with our waste, and specifically plastic waste. So just being aware of that, I've been thinking about it for a few years. And I think walking into the pandemic, or we all basically living through or experiencing the pandemic was definitely, I think, a moment or a life change that made me think, okay, well, this is happening. We're living through it. Plastic really proliferated. It was used even more, single-use plastics, for our food. I mean, everyone in the beginning, we didn't understand how it was spread. Food was being, taken out and moved around in plastic containers even more than it normally was. So I think just getting to that time period in the pandemic and thinking through, this problem is even worse than it was in previous years. How can I step into this space and do something and make an impact and do something here? So I think, I'd been thinking about it for a while, but really the pandemic, I guess, sort of pushed me over the edge or maybe got me over that hurdle. We'll find out. I don't know yet.
Yeah. And you stepped away from the EPA. Did you make that decision because you wanted to focus on the business, or was there something else at play?
Yes. Yeah. I think wanting to focus on the business. My husband took a different job. So I think it was a combination of personal life choices and then thinking, okay, well, if we make these different choices, can I do something different with my career? Can I make an impact in a different way? So I think it was a combination of things.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Okay. So let's dive in. I want to set the framework for the breadth of this problem.
Sure.
As I briefly mentioned in the intro, I've been lucky to see a few countries, about 26.
Wow, that's awesome.
Literally another 40 on my list.
Wow. Right.
I love traveling.
It's amazing.
I haven't been on a plane in over 2 years. It's so sad. I know. Anyways,
know.
All right.
Right.
I'll get over that. But what's most striking, one of my most recent trips prior to the pandemic was to the Philippines, and just out and about, going for a run or going for a walk and seeing, just massive piles of plastic in the corner of a park. Or at the time I was there, it was early 2019. They had a big cleanup in the Manila Bay. We had literally walked by and watched them just dragging plastic out of the ocean, which was, I'm so, glad that Manila is taking that initiative. But how big is the problem if you wanted to frame it for people?
Sure. I mean, I think the problem, as you're describing, you saw the physical plastic pollution, right? We have these physical objects that end up everywhere. They end up in our ocean, they end up on our beaches, in our lands, our other waterways, of course, in our landfills. But the other part of that, or the other half, maybe the other pieces, is that before we even get to the physical pollution part, we have to manufacture that plastic, and that entire manufacturing process of plastic is also part of the problem. We have pollution from that. We have wastes from that are toxic and that are affecting our natural resources and affecting human health. So plastics are made from fossil fuels. So you have mining processes to mine those fossil fuels out of the ground, right, to use them. And then you have other toxic chemicals, synthetic or human-made chemicals that go into making and manufacturing these plastics. All those processes create waste streams. So you have emissions, specifically greenhouse gas emissions that come off those different processes. You have waste streams that end up in our water, in our soil. And so you have just these different types and amounts of pollutants that are coming basically from cradle to grave from the plastics, from the moment that the fossil fuels are being mined to the process of manufacturing and making those plastic containers or any type of plastic, to when it's discarded, ends up in the Philippines, in the ocean, and their beaches, or ends up on our beaches here in San Diego. The problem is huge, and it's from every step of the process with plastics, really. And it's worldwide, as you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, any stats off the top of your head that you can scare us with?
Yes. Yeah. You know what? I'm sorry. I should have brought up some of those stats.
Sorry, I know I'm putting
are
you on
scary.
the spot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, the stats are scary. I apologize. I don't have the
ballpark.
I mean,
That's okay.
I mean, as Americans, we're producing millions of pounds of plastic, and we're using that every single year. So in the US, unfortunately, we are using the most out of any other country in the world. So we are discarding large amounts. And if you think about how much plastic you use as an individual each day, if you just think through your day, you get up in the morning, what food are you eating? Even our hair products and our makeup products include plastics and chemicals that are used in plastics. So there's just so many facets to our daily life where these products are ingrained, sort of, right? They're ingrained in how we live.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of innovation around this, but it's the cost, right? Like manufacturers, what's going to drive Procter and Gamble to then go to a recycled product, plastic product, something that's made out of something else. It's that for them, it's the bottom line, right? And it's, what's the stability of this product? This is, what we've done all along. So getting not only consumers to shift, but also companies like the size of Procter and Gamble to shift is a challenge. So,
right.
Yeah. I love that you're, let's start with where we are and what we can control. I'm a big fan of that. So,
right.
So I know you came up with the idea for Refill Exchange. You've been working on it. And I know we've talked a bit, looking for physical space to set up shop. So let's make the assumption you've found that physical space. The doors are open. Walk us in, kind of paint the picture for us of what I would expect walking into the Refill Exchange. What would I do? How would I do it?
You will be able to walk in and you can bring your own containers. So you can, if you have jars, if you have plastic containers that you've washed and you want to bring in and reuse, you can do that. So you walk in, you bring your own container. You can also buy them if you happen to not have your own container with you, or you choose to buy something, maybe a glass or a stainless steel container that you will be able to have a long life cycle or reuse many times in the future. So you bring your container, you purchase one, you can then walk into the store, weigh your container. So you'll be able to tear that or weigh that so you know how much that weighs. And then you go in to, get whatever product you want. If it's grains, we'll have flours, sugars, grains, nuts, dry bulk goods, as well as produce. You can, walk in, get your product, use your container, you weigh it again, of course, and then you pay for, that actual amount that you're purchasing. So it's, you're reusing containers, you're preventing the use of that single-use plastic, but you're also purchasing the amount of food that you need, and in hopes that you're not overproducing or over-purchasing food that you would waste later. So it's also reducing food waste as well.
That's great. Yeah. Costco, of course, comes to mind, right? Like,
yes,
I really
right.
need a 50 pound bag of rice. Or
right. Exactly.
Got it. That's awesome. And, are there other models like this around that are inspiring you?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are a lot of stores that are online. They're sort of in this space that are focused on zero waste, that are looking at sustainability, both products that are sustainable, so not made with synthetic chemicals or plastics, and then food, of course, that's not packaged in plastic, and focused on more local or regionally sourced products and food. There are some stores here in San Diego, a couple different ones in the county that are focused on selling cleaners and soaps as well as foods in bulk, and not using, pre-packaged in plastic items.
Awesome. And so I just want to kind of go back to the types of products. So we have like grains. What comes to mind for me is, and folks who are listening to this might have never heard of Henry's, but we have a store in San Diego called Henry's where, you go in and you scoop out, maybe with COVID that stopped for a bit, but sounds like it's back. And you use their, kind of normal plastic bags that you would use for produce. So the idea is I come in with my container, I get it weighed. Do I like slap a label on it so I know how much it weighs? Or what if I had 15 containers with me and I was buying a bunch of different things?
Yes. So we will have an electronic system so that you can keep tags with each container or each bottle that will weigh the container and then weigh it at the end. So we'll be able to keep track electronically of how much you have in that container. So if you bring in 15, you'll be able to have 15 separate, weights and measurements for those particular products.
Got it. Awesome. And so then I fill up my containers with whatever it is. Then when I'm checking out, is there sort of a label that then goes on that where it's scanning? I'm getting into the technical details here, but I'm really curious at how all this will work.
Sure. You wouldn't need another label you mean as a label to take home with you?
No, just like when you scan me out, how do you know I have, dried beans versus dried rice in my container?
Oh, well, you would be able to, you would have to say what the actual product is.
Got it.
That you have put in your container, right? If it's not clear, you can't see it. Yes.
Yeah. Like if it's a stainless steel container or something.
Right.
Okay. Cool. I'm just trying to picture it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's okay.
That's awesome. That's great. We'll talk about, kind of where are you at in the business? What's coming up? What are you looking to do? I know we've had some conversations about maybe some crowdfunding and stuff like that.
That's right. So we are officially crowdfunding. We did kick off our Indiegogo campaign. So we are moving forward with that. We are hoping to, crowdfund, get some support to be able to get a physical space. So I know you and I have talked about just finding that commercial space, and that's a whole nother, piece of a small business and a challenge in itself. But that's what we're moving towards. That's our next step. So we're hoping that gaining some momentum and some support with crowdfunding, we're hoping that that will be our immediate next step and to get there. So we're excited. We've officially launched our Indiegogo campaign. We have that up and going. Any helpful promotion is what we're looking for at the moment. It's really exciting. We've already seen a lot of support, a lot of positive messaging. So it feels like it's great, and we have momentum behind us to move forward.
That's exciting. And how long is that campaign run through?
Goes to January 7th.
Okay. We better get this podcast out quick.
Yes, that's right. So a few more weeks. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. We'll do the best we can. And Rose, what's the future plans? Like, do you see multiple locations? Like what's the future look like?
Oh, it would be great if we could have multiple locations. I think getting established here in the San Diego community, I think is our first step. We have a store people can buy their bulk goods, buy their produce, buy sustainable products, home goods, and also having those reusable containers and offering that as a service as well. There's other companies that are also doing this, the reusable container services. If we just think through any sort of restaurant or event or catering that we have in our daily lives, different, parties, anything really, a lot of takeout food is using the plastic containers. So getting into that space of having the reusable container service is also, what I hope we have as our next steps for Refill Exchange.
I love it. So if someone's listening to this, they want to support your I keep saying Kickstarter. It's just by default. Okay. It's like Kleenex, right?
Right.
Support your Indiegogo, or they want to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that, Rose?
You can go to refillexchange.com. So all of our campaign information is on our website, refillexchange.com. And you can also contact us through the website.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Rose. It's been great to learn about your background. I didn't know about all the cool things you've done.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.